one division is carrying the whole company. And every other division is losing money, and this one is carrying it.
Wow.
And so if you're looking, if you're looking at your financials and you're like, man, I don't understand how we're not making money.
Yep.
Oftentimes, one set of activities or business unit or type of work you're doing, you're just sucking all the profit out.
Welcome, Kurt. My name is Nate Hall. I will be guest hosting the D2D Experts podcast today.
Okay.
I've got Kurt here. Kurt, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and your company?
Absolutely, man. My name is Kurt Denninghoff. I own Pivotl. We are a bookkeeping and fractional CFO service, and we serve companies in the trade. So solar, basically from solar, roofing, pest control, and specifically, door-to-door companies as well.
Yeah, that's perfect. Why did you choose that niche? What did you find in that niche of door-to-door companies that, they really do have a need for your services?
Well, I got my start in door-to-door, as a 19-year-old.
Okay.
And, I learned the power of sales and just how impactful it can be to learn how to sell.
Yeah. And
through that, probably through mismanagement my own money when I was 19, 20. Yep. Right, I started running into this thing, you need to file your taxes as a 1099, right? Yeah. You start running into the finance problem. One of my mentors says that when you make under $1 million, you have an income problem. When you make over it, you have a tax problem.
Yeah,
right. And I think there's levels in there, right? So as you start making more as a salesperson, right, what happens? Say you've got this big pile of cash. How are you going to invest it? How are you going to start, do you buy crypto? Do you buy Bitcoin? Do you get into real estate, right?
Whatever my buddy says, right?
Yeah, and then all these ads start hitting you, right? Like,
that's
hey,
true.
Sign up for my course, buy this thing, start this business, right? And so, that's my experience. I started selling for a few years, and I know door to door, and then later on, built a business, and then got introduced to kind of the finance world, and then that became my next obsession.
Yeah, I love that. I love, as a past door-to-door rep and even a business owner, I love finding out about companies like yours that I didn't know existed beforehand. I can look back at some of my failures, some of the hard lessons that I had to learn. I had that belief that I had to become that expert in every single facet and area of my business, and including accounting. I running my own company, took some accounting classes, hated it, realized that wasn't for me, but I wanted to have a little bit of that financial literacy to be able to make better decisions for my company. And I imagine there's a lot of young entrepreneurs, CEOs out there in that same boat that could really lean on your expertise and your company's expertise and not have to hire a full-time CFO to come in and do that work for them, which is, extremely expensive. So knowing that exists, that's already a huge thing. So in that, we'll actually start with a little background first. Like, what made you decide that was, a business that you wanted to start? Besides your own experience, like, where did that idea come from for you to start a firm that does fractional CFO work or accounting work?
So it actually started, I worked for a consulting company after I exited the alarm world. I had this just desire to, get into something else, really. I wanted to do something else that was a little bit more, that leveraged a little bit more of my other skill sets that I wanted to develop. And I worked for this consulting company for years, and it was a mind-opening experience. Because we worked with companies that were doing 3 million, 5 million, 8 million, 10 million, 25 million, all the way up to 200 million.
Huge range.
And I started to see the differences in terms of how these companies operated. And you start to see these common threads between what the guys are doing that are really operating at a higher level and what the guys that are lacking that can get to that level, but maybe are missing a couple key things. And one of the big things that I identified was that these big companies, what happens when you walk into a company? Even like here, when I walked in, there's dashboards, right?
Yep. Yeah. KPIs everywhere, tracking
we've got numbers, right? The numbers are so important. Data, making decisions based on data, looking at the models, right? All these things. And so as you go up in these bigger company sizes, I started correlating, having great data and great financials to big success. And so what I realized though with the smaller companies is a lot of them, maybe the owner was doing the bookkeeping. Maybe the mom's doing the bookkeeping. Maybe
oftentimes it's like a family member. Yeah.
Right. Who's like, hey, you know, my sister turned 19 and she stepped in and started doing our books.
Yeah.
And inevitably we'd look at these companies and the books would be a mess.
Yeah, I bet.
Hey, what's your COGS? What's the percentage of revenue of your marketing? How much are we spending on your labor? And
if they can remember their login to QuickBooks.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, let me try to log in. I'm like, oh, my mom actually has it. I'm like, well, do you have a P&L? My CPA could probably send us one, but I haven't. Let's look in the CRM, right? Look at our sales.
Right.
And so I identified that kind of as these companies grow, a lot of times the difference between the 3, the 10, the 15, the 20, and you get bigger is just their attention to data. And so what we do and what we strive to do is to bring that excellence in data and reporting that you experience in these bigger companies down to the small $3-4 million range and make it affordable where it fits the budget.
Yeah. And
you can get the data you need to be able to grow.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I wouldn't have to hire a 6-figure, CFO to come into my company and
or more.
Always have, oftentimes multiple 6 figures. Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's also, it's one of those things. One of my mentors, he says this, that a lot of times in marketing and in finance, you don't necessarily need someone full time. You need an expert for 10 to 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Because an expert can look at something and in just a short amount of time be like, hey, right here's our real problem. Go work on this.
Yeah.
And you don't need the full time.
I love that. Give you the to-do list after identifying the problems, and oftentimes they can find and identify those much, much quicker than is necessarily needed for a full-time employee.
Yeah. Or they make the mistake. This is common too that I'll see is, they'll hire somebody, let's say even at a $70,000 or $80,000 range, right? And they think they can do it, as opposed to getting. So what we leverage and the way our model works is, we run like an entire finance department inside of a big company.
Oh, wow.
So we have, bookkeepers,
like accounts
CPAs,
payable, accounts receivable.
Whole thing.
Wow.
Whole thing. And we also have the ability to have like a controller step in if you need to, right? So we understand how to control the money from a fractional CFO side, which really what a CFO does, it's more presentation and coaching and explaining the numbers and helping you learn and understand as an entrepreneur, as an owner. Yeah. What does having my labor be too high actually mean and impact the business? What does that mean about how efficient my office is running if my labor's at 18% when the best companies in the industry are at 9%?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What does that actually mean in the office? Well, maybe it means that your team isn't utilized properly. Maybe it means you have too many staff for how much revenue you're doing. Maybe you tried to build too fast and your sales haven't caught up with your office, right? All these different stories that might be the case, but being able to look at that and help that owner identify that as a problem is in terms of, when he looks at the bank account, he's like, hey, why is there no money?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so
that's really cool. I like that. And even as you're talking about some of these issues, so I've run companies in the solar space, in the solar industry, and some that have been large enough to have CFOs and others that aren't. And even with the ones that we do have those people in the positions, they don't see what's happening in other companies in our industry. And so to even be able to bounce that off you, like what's normal for our space? What are you seeing in other companies? Like maybe my labor costs are 15%. And I think that's really high, and you're seeing over here it's 25%. Like, and not that you would go out and share all this data, but just knowing that you're not doing this work just for one company where you're pigeonholed in and blinded to only seeing this one little piece of a giant data set. Like that, there's a lot of value in that, I would imagine.
Absolutely. I mean, being able to understand kind of the, we call that as it's industry benchmarking, and then at the same time, best practices.
Love that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so a good rule of thumb, I'll give one away, right? Is one person of overhead for every $1 million in sales.
There you go. There's a good nugget right there, guys. Take that one. That one was free. The next one we're charging for. That's
right. But it's a great rule of thumb, right? So if you've got 5 people in the office, you should be doing a minimum of $5 million in sales.
Yeah.
And that keeps your overhead at about 8 to 10% in terms of your labor cost.
Yeah.
So that's like a really good rule of thumb that you can take and use and really think about. So, if you're doing $1 million a year, and your office staff has 2 people in it, and they're telling you, hey, we're overworked and things aren't going well, you might want to look at what they're doing day to day and pull them aside and fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super valuable. And if you didn't have that, your service who you did not you'd have no clue that that's even an issue, and you would listen to your employees, hire another person, and you'd just be making that problem even bigger and bigger.
Exactly. Yeah. Instead of identifying that, hey, maybe we have maybe we need to look at the role that they're doing. What are their responsibilities day to day? What are the SOPs that we have that are driving those positions?
Yeah.
Right. So then we can start to dig in and start to identify, why are we having to hire more people to get the same job done? Right? Why are we being inefficient in this area? Yeah. So that's how we can kind of dig in and start solving that.
That's extremely valuable. It's interesting. Everything you're talking about is, data-driven decision making, and I've said that before. I hear a lot of people out there talking about that right now. A lot of companies don't even have the data. Some have the data and they don't even analyze it to make the decisions from that data. And companies that I see that are doing really, really well are the ones that collect the right data and then, have the right reports made from that data to then make the right decisions. And without that, you could be thinking, this is where I'm most profitable. And then once you actually get into it, you're like, oh, it's actually over on this other channel. I need to double down over here, close that side down. And without the data, you're just going off of your feelings and your gut, which oftentimes, unfortunately, is wrong.
What do you think that typically is, like residential versus commercial?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really good question. Even in one little space of what I was working on previously was building out service in the solar space. And I have my
service. Okay.
Yeah. So for all the orphan
repairs.
Yep, exactly. For all those orphaned systems out there. And so,
that's a bigger and bigger issue, isn't it?
It's huge.
As the space is growing, I hear, it's interesting. I hear that more and more.
Yep. It's really cool. And I loved it. It was really fun building that out. And one of the things that surprised me was my profitability on my direct to consumer versus my business to business. I was bringing in a lot of business and able to charge a lot, much higher margin on my business to business because they had a need that they had to have satisfied immediately versus my consumer already knew they were abandoned. I had to charge the customer a lot less. However, I was more profitable on those ones because they were much faster. And so once I actually looked at the data, got into it, it shocked me, and I would have been, doubling down on the wrong revenue stream without that proper data. And that's something
incredibly insightful, actually.
Yeah. That's something that a company like yours would have come in and been like, here, pointed out the right things and shown me where I'm most profitable.
In fact, that's such a good example. In fact, one of the first things that we do in our process is we look at the business units in the company and split those out as profit centers or business units. Right. And then we work in getting all the labor for that business unit tied to it, all the cost of goods or your equipment, right. You got to pick up new screws or new parts, right? Yeah. We want to get all those materials tied to that business unit and out of our replacement or our new sales division.
Yep.
Because otherwise, exactly what you said, we might be underpriced. I see it all the time where we come into a business, split that out, and one division is carrying the whole company. And every other division is losing money. And this one is carrying it.
Wow.
And so if you're looking, if you're looking at your financials and you're like, man, I don't understand how we're not making money.
Yep.
Oftentimes one set of activities or business unit or type of work you're doing, you're just sucking all the profit out.
Yeah. Yeah. What level of involvement does your company have with the companies that you service? Obviously, you do accounting, bookkeeping, financial, accounts receivable, accounts payable. At what point, do you draw the line and you're not involved?
I guess that depends on the client.
Okay.
It really depends on the company and the client and what their needs are and what they have in-house. A lot of times when you pass over up to about 5 million, it makes sense to not have someone in the office because you can run really lean and keep as many profits as possible. I think when you get above the 5, 6, somewhere in that range, it's really healthy to have someone in the office because they get familiar with the customers, the invoices.
Yep.
Right. And so I think it's very valuable at that point. The place that we really thrive in, though, we can handle those things for you, but there's some things that are better in the office. But certainly in all the bookkeeping, reporting, pretty much everything that you need to do in QuickBooks and reporting wise and analytics and building models for you to understand labor and all these things. That's where we can step in and help a lot.
That's really cool. Something that just came to my mind is, thinking about how much AI has disrupted so many industries, and disrupted in a sense that it just adds so much more value. In your specific space in financials, bookkeeping, accounting, have you seen awesome application of AI to help generate some of this data, the reports, anything like that?
Absolutely. So we use it pretty broadly, all the way from our invoicing in terms of, let's say that we actually built a system internally to do this where, whenever you go and purchase equipment or materials from a supplier, you can ping our inbox. It will take all the information off of it and put it right into your QuickBooks.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And so it can help automate those processes. And what I think AI is super powerful in doing is speed, right?
Yep.
Speed to data. And then also on the analysis side as well.
Yeah.
We use it pretty heavily on that side as well to generate faster analysis that we can send out to our clients.
Yeah, which ultimately leads the leadership of that company to faster decision making, right? Like
Exactly.
That's the whole purpose. It's not like AI is making these decisions for these companies, but it's giving them the bite-sized piece of information in a concise manner that then allows them to execute, which is really cool.
And I think the impact's going to get bigger too.
Yeah.
I don't think we're at the very beginning.
Yeah. I love seeing it. Yeah.
The very beginning. I think it's fascinating. I mean, of course, I'm in one of those spaces too where, I get asked that question a lot. Kurt, what about AI? What's it going to do to the industry?
Yeah. Like it's almost fear. Like, is it going to take over your business?
Exactly. And what's interesting is we talk about that a lot internally. And what's so interesting in our space is that it's actually quite hard to build. And I've had this conversation with so many people in the space, see other CFOs or accountants, and the space is so fractured. So if you look at, let's even take a solar company versus an electrical company versus a plumbing company, all the suppliers are different. The suppliers might have a different portal. I mean, we've all been to that supplier that's like, oh no, it's only paper. We don't have a portal.
Yep.
How do you AI that?
Yeah.
And then you've got, how many different CRMs do we have in our space?
So many.
Right. So then all that data has to be tied in. And so I think that the challenge with AI right now is just the consolidation of data.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And then at the same time, there's also there's so many unique situations that we have to train our people on. Like, for example, you work with a smaller company and they don't even keep the receipts. They show up and they don't use POs, right? They're installers, or they buy it from the funding company that pays all their equipment invoices, right? And they deduct it out. So there's so many unique situations that we've struggled to put something together that's, analogous or works across every single company.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the struggle in the space right now. I'm sure it'll get better, and I hope it does. But that's...
Yeah, I imagine a large part of what, you and your firm do is educate these entrepreneurs and CEOs and other leadership of how they should be even tracking this data the right way. Like these companies that you're talking about that don't have the receipts, didn't create POs. Like, do you get into that education side very much and say, okay, let's work together, but this is what I need you to do going forward? Does that happen much?
Absolutely. So the first 3 months of almost any engagement, I spend so much time with the owner talking through process to get the right data, whether it's, okay, when we take receipts, we're going to send them to this inbox.
Yeah.
I know that the guys right now are just going to the supply house and they're buying the parts and then going to the job.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to add a step in there. We're going to create a PO.
Yeah.
Here's how the PO needs to be tagged with the PO number, right? We're going to, another thing, if you want to get your POs and your invoicing match, always use the job number in your CRM to your PO number.
You'd be surprised how many don't do that. Yeah.
If you do that, because think what it does is now I can tie the data from my job to every PO at the supply house, and now I can job cost. Because I can match the data from those two unique numbers.
Rather than searching through database to find a customer name
the most
to
common
match up
thing
or anything.
Is I go to the supply house and I say, okay, hey, the job number is the customer's last name. In my CRM, it's a number. Right? So matching those two things together can be super challenging. And so, absolutely, I guess to answer that question would be, we go through all of that because that's the only way to get good data.
Yep. You've got to have it tracked the right way, which is an important thing to understand, because I imagine, some people listening would say in their minds, I have a need for this, but man, I don't even want them to come in and see how I'm doing it today. Like, it's too embarrassing. Like, I don't have receipts. I don't have anything. But you're saying like, that's pretty normal with these customers that, the clients that you're taking on. Look,
it's super normal. And I can tell you, I've worked with big companies and small ones. It's always a challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, in the last year, probably one of the larger products we got brought into, I'm obviously not going to say names or anything, but it was a large company doing over 200 million.
Wow.
And 14 locations. All of the financials were not consolidated. They had a reporting process that took them like 2 months to get the numbers back. So they were 3-4 months back. Receipts not coming in. So this problem is not like...
It's not just for the small little guys.
No, it's across the board.
Yeah.
Across the board. It's a challenge to get it right.
So I wouldn't have to be embarrassed. Like, it would be fine. Like, I would need you more than ever before, and I should start today. That would
absolutely
be
not. And to that
I'd
point,
give.
Like having I think as you progress as an entrepreneur, you're going to constantly run into these barriers where you're like, man, I do not know how to do this. And your ability to accept that and move through it and find a new someone who does, right? I read this incredible book. I think it might be a Dan Kennedy book, but it's called Who Not How.
Okay. And
in this book, he talks about how when we're new entrepreneurs, every problem we're into, we go, how am I going to fix this? How am I going to fix this? How am I going to fix this?
Yeah.
And what I find the best entrepreneurs do is instead of asking how first, we ask who. Who can solve this problem for me?
Yeah.
And so with finances, I think it's the exact same way.
Yeah.
Right? When most entrepreneurs, we want to do things right.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
We want to win.
Yeah.
Right? And if you can find the right who's in your business, you can explode.
Yeah.
Like quickly.
Yeah. We want to, but if I'm being honest, like even thinking about the bookkeeping, the accounting, all of those, like revenue driven mind, sales driven mind, I'm like, that's just stuff that's in the way. Like, I know it's a necessary evil, but like, I don't want to do that. I hate doing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so finding somebody who is an expert at solving those issues to allow me and free up my time and bandwidth and energy to focus on the things that are driving the revenue, that are making me successful. I feel like that's super important.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. Another stat that I'll throw out is at any given time, you know, I don't know if you know this, but 90% of businesses that are for sale don't sell.
Oh, interesting. Really?
Yeah.
Because of financials? Is it?
Well,
yeah, I'm curious now.
It's because they're not sellable.
Ah, interesting.
And so I think that mindset that kind of prevails, especially in the door-to-door and sales industry. And by the way, I first part of my career was very much in that same mindset that I thought sales today mattered. But in finance, there's this thing called enterprise value. And when you go to want to sell your company, that's the biggest event that as an entrepreneur that you can make, and that should be your goal.
It is the sale of your business.
It is not the cash flow that you're making today.
Yeah.
That's when your salespeople win.
Yeah.
Your salespeople win day to day because they're bringing home the 250,
lion's share,
300,
a lot of money,
400, right? Yeah. And you as the entrepreneur, and I know you can relate to this because I know
eating rice and beans.
You're eating cheap, right? Yep. Maybe you're taking your 80K base, right? And you're like, man, I got to get to another day.
Bootstrapping it.
Right? And so your time to eat is the sale, right? I cannot stress that enough. And if you don't prepare for that, you will be in that bucket of the 80% who can't sell.
So what is enterprise value? Like how do you define that? Like,
so enterprise value is going to be a business that has tangible systems, right? Accounting
intellectual
systems,
property,
processes. It can be intellectual property, right? Patents, cash flow, right? So all these things comprise enterprise value. And so as an entrepreneur, you want to be doing things that are going to build that value. And any guys that are going to come and want to buy your business, especially for millions of dollars, have to understand what they're actually buying. And so the sooner you put those processes in place and you start reporting in those numbers, that's the payout you want to work towards as an entrepreneur. Not the like, hey, we had look, it's great to have that huge sales week.
Gross revenue.
Incredible. Get the top line, party, have fun with your guys. But in the back of your head, you got to be preparing for that one day exit. Because that's when the big liquidity event happens for the owner. The rest of the time, you're paying everybody else first.
Yep.
You're paying your reps, you're paying your office.
And you're taking all the liability.
All the risk. And when you get to that rope where you want to sell, you want to be prepared. And so prepared means 3 years of financials.
Okay.
Right?
Write this down, everybody.
Showing positive cash flow, free cash flow. So, one thing that is a common misconception is, hey, spend every dollar so you show no profit.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Because on the tax side of it, you're like, I don't want to be taxed, but...
Right, but guess what? You spend every dollar, you're not showing any profits, and so...
Who's going to buy that business? Why would they buy that business? What's it worth? It's worth nothing.
Now, there's ways there's methods to take that money and invest it and reduce your taxes. But when we're going to sell a company, we want to show that this company is making money.
So as far as like even on the tax end of things, like if you are taking care of a company's accounting, bookkeeping, financing, accounts receivable, payable, I imagine you're generating all the reports that one would need for their business to file their taxes correctly.
Yep.
Like they're going to be clean, simple, easy to do because of all the work that you guys have already done for that company.
Yep. And then one thing we will do is we do have a tax advisory.
Okay.
So we'll walk through different vehicles, and we have vendors set up that can help you do things, like even doing a 179 deduction for vehicles, right? Where it's over 6,000 pounds.
Yep.
Walking through how to do that. So we do handle that part of it. Once you're a fractional CFO client, we quarterback it.
Okay.
But we do recommend everybody has their own CPA that they work with closely to file it.
Perfect. So what are some of the services you do offer? And could I hire you for just like one of those? Like, is it like an a la carte type of option? Do you have different plans in place for that? Or is it kind of an all or nothing type of thing?
No, so we do, I guess the base service would be bookkeeping.
Okay.
We do sometimes get brought in with just on a fractional CFO level. However, most of the time we do bring in an element of doing some bookkeeping or data analysis in that position, because most of the time, and I would say 95% of the time, there are errors. And so even if we come in on a consulting level, and like some of the stuff we were talking about earlier around, processes for receipts, for purchase orders, for payroll, for comp plans, right? All these things, we might get brought in to help design. Executive comp is a big one.
Yeah.
How do you give your leadership team small pieces of equity and align everyone's interest towards a big exit or a big goal? And how do you design all those comp plans if everyone wins? It's challenging, right?
Yeah, it is, absolutely.
And so we get brought in for a lot of things like that. Executive comp is a big one. Understanding how to put together that executive comp for your leadership team. All entrepreneurs want to do it. They love the concept 100%. Of it. But how do you execute on it?
Yep.
Right.
And make sure you're doing it the right way, in a way that works and incentivizes people and gets buy-in. And
exactly. Yeah. And we dream of that, right? Because
rack my brain and lose sleep over it, wanting to come up with the right model and having to redo it over and over again,
100%.
And losing guys in the process. Yeah,
exactly. Or, even worse, like, and there's things that are worse than not making money, like losing great friends or partners that, your brothers that have rode with you, and you have a disagreement over comp because, so things like that are just so critical. You're right. But going back to your question, we have a team of bookkeepers, analysts, CFO, and then we have tax advisory.
I love that.
Now the tax advisory, think of us like a quarterback.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to look at the financials and we're going to help you strategize with the end goal in mind.
I like that. So that process, like, let's say I wanted to onboard, like, do we do an interview, make sure we're good fits for each other? Like, what does that kind of onboarding process look like?
Yep. So our onboarding process, the first step is we want to do a financial review. Obviously, we're going to get on a discovery call. We're going to get to know you a little bit. Where we're going to learn about your business, learn about what your goals are, learn about the current lay of the land, right? Do you have a bookkeeper?
Yeah.
Is your CPA?
How bad is it right now?
Yeah. What's the lay of the land? And then based on that, we'll do a financial review where we'll connect into your financials and give you a full, we put about 10 hours into these where we'll do a comprehensive review of the current financial situation.
Wow.
And then on our next call, it usually takes about a week, we'll give you a plan in terms of, hey, here are the things that need to be done to get this in line. Here's how long it'll take, and here's how much it'll cost.
That's cool.
And then we always give 3 options. Like, you can engage with us on just bookkeeping, where we come in and clean it up.
Yeah.
We'll send you the monthly reports.
Yeah.
Or if you want us to do bookkeeping plus our analysis, which gives you like pricing models, comp plans, things like that, we can do that level. And then if you want to get on one-on-one calls with me where I'm going to coach you through, hey, here's what this number means, here's how we're going to improve profit, why is this number off? That's our fractional CFO level. So we engage on any of those 3 levels, and we offer that with anybody that meets with us.
That's cool. I like that. Who would not be a good fit for you and your company? Like, what's, there's always those people that I'm like, I would not work with them for whatever reasons, but like, just as far as something that you could set in stone, like they would not be a good fit because of XYZ. What would that look like?
Yeah, I would say guys doing less than $1 million a year in sales as owners, you have a sales problem.
Yeah. You got to tackle that first.
Go tackle that first. Even getting into the close to $2 million level, about between that 1.5 and 2, I still believe you truthfully have a sales problem. And so below that level, we can obviously do bookkeeping. We can help you on that side. but go crush your sales. Go work with Sam.
I was gonna say, if you're in that boat, you need to talk to Sam.
Yeah, go work with Sam.
His D2D experts, right? Yeah.
Yeah, go work with Sam.
Yeah.
And get that dialed in. You know, those are oftentimes the ones that, you know, sometimes they need the most help financially, but, you know, and we can help you do cleanup and things like that in that size, but really you have a sales problem smaller than that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So from your position and being able to work with so many different companies and seeing the things that work well, the things that don't work well, and just like now coming from your entrepreneurial spirit, like what's maybe one or two of the biggest mistakes that you see young starting up companies making? And it could be anything, but, you know, I would imagine something specifically in that financial realm where you work. But what are some of those mistakes and pitfalls that anyone listening could, you know, take as a nugget to avoid?
Yeah. Big one is managing cash. And what I mean by managing cash is, you know, really spend time looking at how your comp plans affect your cash flow. And so let's take an example of, you know, if you're on a with solar, right?
Yep.
We want to make sure that how we're compensating our reps ties in as closely as possible to how the company's getting paid.
Rather than giving them a lot of money up front and then,
and dealing with that on the front end.
Yep.
You know, so managing cash is probably the most critical, especially as you're in that growth phase, right? And you're bootstrapping it.
Yeah, every dollar matters more than ever. Yeah.
And so just being super, super cautious with your compensation plans. And then the other big one is terms accounts and credit cards.
Okay.
So, you know, technicians, do not give installers credit cards.
No? Okay.
No. Company cards, do not get the Amex and then everyone has an employee card because they tell you it's faster.
Yeah.
Like, do not do
let it happen.
No, you have to control expenses.
Yeah. And
so young entrepreneurs, I would recommend that every dollar that goes out, you make sure you approve that dollar.
Wow.
Right?
Yep.
And so as much as you know, as much as you possibly can, you know, review invoices, review equipment. Your suppliers will steal from you is another big one.
Yep.
So, you know, when your guys
your
can show up.
Employees will.
Yeah. Well, you know, and this happens all the time. You know, guys are going to the supply house and they're buying gold-plated screws.
Yeah.
Right? Because are we looking at the purchase order and making sure that we're buying the cheapest screws, or are we buying the ones that the tech likes because they screw in twice as fast, but they cost 5 times as much and they fit his drill a little better, right? Like,
and when it's not, I mean, it's way easier to spend somebody else's dollar than your own.
Yes. And so like tools expenses, right? Like how many drills have been left on top of a roof under a solar panel that is a $200 DeWalt drill?
Right? Running a solar company, we would get calls all the time. Hey, we've got your tool belt and your tool. And like, oh, geez.
Yes.
Okay, we'll be out. Thanks.
Yes. And so like having that credit card and having the guy have to call you and be like, hey, man, I'm not just where he can go to the supply house and, you know, throw it on the terms account, right?
Yep.
The terms accounts can really bury you, right? Where you're running jobs, and then you get this bill for, you know, $100,000. You're like, wait a minute.
How? Where did this come from?
Wait a minute. Our equipment,
there's no way.
We did these jobs. I thought the equipment was going to be $75,000.
Yep.
Where is this $100,000 bill?
Yeah.
Oh, we had this part. We had to do this part. We had to do this part. We didn't put that on the proposal or the invoice.
Yeah.
Like where? And the customer's paid. It's installed, right?
You can't go back to them and ask for more at that point. Yeah.
And so that, you know, depending on the size you're in, a lot of the guys think that are bigger kind of get a grasp on that because they run into that wall. But those would be a couple of the big things.
I like that. Thanks. For you, let's go back to your 19-year-old self knocking doors. Like, what lessons did you learn knocking doors that has led to your success today running a company?
Man, that's an insightful question. And there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
You know, my door knocking experience was I absolutely loved it, and I thought it was incredible.
Yeah. Did you ever cry? Like while you're out on the doors, just like hitting that rock bottom, right? Like that's something that I think a lot of reps probably wouldn't admit to. And I'm like, I gotta look back. Or at least I felt like it. I don't know if I ever shed any real tears, but I felt it in here.
You know, there is one door I'll never forget. I don't even like telling the negative stories, but I've had those doors that were hard, you know, just like, oh man, that was a tough one.
Yeah.
You know, I had a guy once, he opened the door and he's like, hey man, could you shut that door in the gate? Shut that gate on the way out, okay? Shut the door on me. And I was like, and I don't know why, this is in my first week. He's like, just get that, hey man, could you get that gate on the way out?
Yeah. And that was his way of dismissing you.
And I don't know why this one has stuck with me for so long.
Yeah.
But like as a young 19-year-old rep, like it just, and, we all get the get a real job. All that stuff is always common. But I'd say the thing that was just so valuable for me, and this is such a skill set that I think everybody in this industry has, like the ability to drive revenue is one of those skills that will literally bless you your entire life. Like understanding the customer, the communication, and just how to get out there and create dollars is so valuable. And even in my experience in finance, like I have friends that are in the space, no matter what or where you want to end up and where you want to go, this is most for those reps that are out there. Like your sales skills and the things you develop from communication will bless you no matter what field you get into, no matter what area. So like I take it all with me. I mean, I that's when I got into books. My first sales manager, everybody gets this book, but handed me Rich Dad Poor Dad. Right?
That's
I don't know
classic.
why, I don't know why we always get that one first.
Yeah, you're like, of all the books out there, but that's a
still,
classic.
It kicked off my learning journey too, right?
Of self-improvement and that drive to become more. Yeah,
because you get told no 50 times, and then you go home and you're like, man, what happened today? And you're like, man, I gotta grow. Hey, let's practice these objections. And these like that cycle of failure, get over the emotional side, and then learn. That cycle from my door knocking, I think, was something that was the most valuable thing I ever took from it. Was just like going out, running your face on the ground, learning, and then coming back and practicing and getting better. And then you go out and what happens? You learn that new way to overcome the objection.
And you put it in practice and
then you're closing a deal and you're like, you're staring down, like and back in my day, we had to get the social to run credit. And so I was like, what's your social?
You're like, please just give it to me. It's fine.
And I'm just staring down. My manager, don't look up. Just, just what's your social? Right? And so like, I'd say that lesson of just going to failure and then coming home, retraining, and then going back out, and then watching success get better and better and better. I think that was the most valuable thing I took from it.
I love that. And super applicable in day-to-day running a business at a high level. Like you are going to have failures. You're going to go back, learn the lessons that need to be learned. You're going to implement and start over again and just keep that cycle going. So starting your, your career door knocking, you mentioned kind of kicked off your learning desire of self-improvement and things. Today, like what does that look like for you personally today? Do you still read? Do you still like learning? Do you invest in education? What's some of that you do that you feel leads to your success?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest investments I made in the last few years was, I was an entrepreneur and I looked around and I was like, I really want to have better friends. This was one of these things I went through as an entrepreneur a couple years ago. And it was kind of I was looking around, I was like, man, I've had the same buddies for a long time. I'm seeing guys even Sam speaking. I'm like, man, I want to have better friends. And so I, set aside, at the time it was about $100,000 a few years ago. And I was like, I'm going to take this money and I'm going to go invest it. And I'm going to put myself in rooms that are going to allow me to meet people that I want to meet.
I love that.
And so one of the things I did was I bought a CEO ticket to the Vault conference with Patrick Bet-David. I don't know if you know Patrick Bet-David.
I don't know. I feel like I will now. I'm
the Vault conference is an incredible entrepreneurs conference in Florida. $13,000 tickets for a 3-day event. And at the time,
that's
I was like, this is insane. Everyone's telling me it's crazy. And I was like, take my credit card. This is what I committed to. And I did it. I've joined other groups like Andy Elliott. I'm in that brotherhood there. That's also a sizable investment.
Absolutely.
I've joined this group with Sam's
league and circle group.
I just, for all the entrepreneurs that are out there that, for me, I was experiencing loneliness. I mean, honestly, that's what it was. A little bit of I was like, man, I'm my business is doing well, but
I'm missing something still. And
so making that investment was, as an older entrepreneur, I'm 35 now. That was one of the most profound and best investments I ever made. And I solved that problem.
It's like you spending money towards putting yourselves around other successful people and
then, you asked your question was kind of what are you doing now to learn? When you're in those rooms, we're talking about relationships, we're talking about business, we're talking about 100%. Books we're reading, we're talking about self-improvement, we're filming podcasts, like, and then you start to have this group of people that are pushing you to get better and better.
Yeah.
And then it's real similar to that experience when you're in the doors, right? So as an entrepreneur, as you get older, I think it's critical to like make those investments.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too.
And keep reading the books, right? But attend those conferences. I think in this day and age, like the live event and the what we call mastermind groups, they're so insanely valuable.
Yeah.
Like they're worth every single dollar that you spend and invest.
Yeah.
I can't even describe how valuable they are.
Yeah.
Like what's the value of a new friend?
Priceless, honestly.
You know what I mean?
It really, really is. Like, how could you possibly put a value on it? Even if that friend even is somebody who like leads directly to revenue and income in your life and change and success, like even then you still couldn't like put a price on that,
You can't.
Yeah.
You can't. Yeah. And so
that's really cool too, because I hear you saying it's not just the money too, right? Like the money is one thing and you can still have all the money and the success on that end of it and still feel unfulfilled. And there's reasons to still be involved with groups of high level people who are like-minded and driven like you. So that's really cool.
And then I think the other part of it that happens naturally as you start to be around people that are smarter than you, have bigger businesses than you, you start to learn, what are the things that they're doing that are different than what I'm doing? Mm-hmm. And then when you start to recognize that, you start to improve, and then it'll be like self-validating, where your team is going to come up to you and be like, man, you're like, I really like appreciate what you said earlier. And you'll start to get this positive feedback loop. That's like, that
just drives it even more.
Super motivating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
It's like when you're working out and you start seeing your muscles growing, you're like, wait a minute. Yeah. Okay, this is working. It's worth putting in this time. It's worth waking up early, hitting the gym, putting in that effort.
100%.
So spending the money on those groups, and obviously, they're not all created equal, and we're not saying to go out there and just like find any local thing and do it, but we'll
definitely join this one.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously D2D experts and others. There's so many good ones out there with awesome, pure-hearted, good leaders who you can get a lot of value from.
Yes.
But I think that's an important thing, is just knowing, like, there's so much information out there in collective minds. It's not all in just like one person's mind. And going out and talking to people, and I for a lot of my life was like very introverted, afraid to get out there and talk to people. And that's something that I've had to learn to overcome in my life, and realizing how much further ahead I could be today if I would just open my mouth.
What did you do to overcome that?
Honestly, just get comfortable being uncomfortable. That for me, like, that was really what it took. It was just knowing that that's what leads to success, and making a determined decision. Like, I'm not just going to sit in a room of all these incredibly, high level people and not start asking them questions. Like, I'm never going to pretend to know everything anymore. Like, even in this simple interview, the things that I've learned from you, like, it's awesome. You can learn so much from everybody, and it doesn't matter that, I've been owned my own companies, done this. Like, there's still so much to learn everywhere. And as long as I feel, as you have that mindset, like, you will learn, you will progress, you will ask the right questions, you will ask for the help when you need it.
Yeah.
And so many people just sit back and, like, maybe they're afraid, at least for me personally, it was like almost this fear of not looking successful. If I have to ask you this advice, like, that means I don't know. Like, that held me back a lot. But
yeah. And how did you overcome it?
Yeah, just learning the hard way, growing old without learning it, But yeah, it's something I still continue to work on, and it'll be a quest for sure. All right, well, thank you for your time. If you have just one last nugget for anybody out there who's maybe just starting their door-to-door career, or they're starting their business, like, what's one piece of advice that you'd give them? And I know you've done a lot, so I'm like really milking it, trying to get one more out of you, because I feel like you've got just a lot of gisdom in there.
Yeah, I would say, I'd say two things that I think the future looks bright. Don't give up hope ever.
Yeah.
And then the other one is read.
It's education and mindset, like those
especially
two
if
things.
You're like a newer guy that's getting started. Like, the value of doing audiobooks.
Yeah.
Keeping your mind healthy.
Yeah.
Another big one that I recently did that's been one of the most profound impacts is I gave up drinking a year ago.
Congrats.
And so I'm officially, literally it's January 1st.
Wow.
1 year. So
congratulations.
And
it's big milestone.
It was a huge impact on me.
Yeah.
And the first few months are hard.
Yeah.
But then after that, it gets a lot better. And so I would also just, challenge you guys, focus on your health.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you get your,
Yes.
when you stop having like the ups and downs of kind of, even light drinking or, hanging out with your boys, you're doing stuff, right? It's all fun, especially in the sales world, right? It's very common.
Yep.
But when you can get that steady state emotions, like you can move mountains with other people and yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I would recommend that too. You need to find God, you need to do these things, whatever your pathway is to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But making that a focus
Mm-hmm.
will really have an outsized return for you.
I love that. So get the education, read books. If I have to get rid of one of my subscriptions, Netflix or Audible, I should probably keep the Audible.
Keep Audible.
Okay. All right, fine.
Keep Audible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keep Audible.
And then as a 38-year-old, definitely the one thing that I will never take for granted is my health. Like seeing so many people just lose the ability to move their bodies and things like that. And it really does bleed over into every other aspect of your life. Like if you are disciplined, it's all connected.
Everything else is an illusion.
Yeah.
You can fix your money. You can fix love. Right? You can fix the relationship with your dad.
Interesting.
You can fix, I think everything else is an illusion, right? Like you can learn something tomorrow that can make you $1 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can, you can still, God, if your dad's alive, and I hope, if your parents are alive, right, you can fix that relationship. You can go find love tomorrow. You can ask the girl in the street, fall in love, and you can do that.
Yeah.
But your health is the only real thing on this planet.
Interesting.
You cannot,
that's not an overnight thing like any of those others.
Everything else is an illusion, right? Like you can be fixed in a year, it can be fixed in 6 months, but your health, it cannot be fixed.
I love that.
Value it.
Yes. Start now while you're young.
Value it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kurt. It's been a pleasure. I've loved sitting down, getting to know you a little bit better in your business. And I wish I knew you 10 years ago when I was starting my business. It would have saved me a lot of heartache. So
absolutely. Well, it was great talking to you. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.